This is Dave Pellegrinelli at AFX Search, licensed private investigators in Palm Beach, Florida. Have a lot of questions from clients about doing surveillance and what type of information gathering can be done by the client and how it's done. So first to start out with, can you do it yourself? Well, private individual, can they do surveillance? Technically, maybe, maybe not. In most states, doing surveillance to gather information for certain purposes is a licensed activity. You have to have a license to gather information using surveillance. On the other hand, if you're just looking to view somebody or to get an idea of what their activities are, it may be legal in your state. However, even if it's not, even if it is legal, you may run into some other laws like stalking laws. If you have a personal interest in the person that you're doing surveillance on, especially if it's adversarial, it may run into stalking or harassment if you're discovered. You also need to worry about breaking other laws such as privacy laws. There are many laws in most states that have to do with an expectation of privacy that a person has. For example, even if they're in an open window, if that person has an expectation of privacy in that residence, somebody looking in the window may run afoul of the law. There's also ideas of sight lines. Can you see that person without them seeing you? And an experienced investigator who has been trained and experienced with surveillance will know exactly how to set up their sight lines to make sure they can see the activity and the expected movement of that person without being discovered by the person or even looking suspicious to neighbors or passersby. If that happens, a lot of times there'll be law enforcement involvement. If you're lurking around a neighborhood or even in a car looking at somebody, this day and age, somebody's going to call the cops. And when law enforcement arrives, you're going to have to explain what you're doing there and that you can prove that you're not stalking a person or harassing a person. And there'll be a report. It'll be official record where a licensed investigator usually has that contact with law enforcement arranged, and in many cases will have the surveillance already acknowledged to law enforcement so they know that you're doing surveillance in the area, and it won't become an issue later and it won't become a police report that somebody can look at. An investigator also needs to know when they can and cannot go on private property to do surveillance. Private property still remains the ownership of that person, and if you're going to go on private property to do surveillance or even to do video or photographic evidence, that can be challenged in court. If you were on private property and you took a picture or took video and you're using that in court to prove something or to develop evidence, the defendant or the other subject can use the sight lines again to see where that picture was taken from to determine if it was on private property and if that was legal. You also have to look at if you're using any type of magnification, if it's a zoom lens or even audio magnification to hear one of those big dish ears. In many circumstances in a lot of states, it's illegal to magnify video or audio where the naked eye or naked ear couldn't see the same thing. So when you're doing surveillance, a professional investigator is going to use all those tools, use their knowledge and their training to do the surveillance the right way, to make sure they're not breaking any traffic laws. Even if the subject is speeding, if the investigator breaks laws, they can also have their results challenged in court. So if surveillance is the needed activity to develop information or to develop intelligence for a case, be sure that you have a professional investigator, and just a licensed investigator may not be enough. You want to make sure that person knows about surveillance and knows how to follow the law so that their results aren't even challenged. And if you're a private individual, just be very careful in doing your surveillance that you're aware of all the laws in your state or that jurisdiction. You may want to check with an attorney about what is allowed and what isn't before you get into do-it-yourself surveillance or do-it-yourself investigations. If you have any questions, feel free to call us up. Our website is afxsearch.com. We're in Palm Beach, Florida. We'll be glad to answer any questions from a potential client, or even if you just want to get some ideas about what your investigation or surveillance may be like.